Amat merat ike tesolderat igmerut.
Hi all, Dave here again, back with part 2 in the series Better Skepticism. In the previous part I spoke about epistemic humility, what it is, and why it is important when it comes to being a better skeptic. In this part I'll be discussing Cartesian Skepticism and how it is useful for better skepticism. If you have ever come across a presuppositionalist, then you probably have some familiarity with the ideas presented by it. Cartesian skepticism is a far more radical kind of skepticism than many in the skeptic community use. Many will even dismiss it offhand, unfortunately, but as we will see, it has many useful things contained within it for those in the skeptic community. In Cartesian skepticism, there is a focus on the deconstruction of the beliefs and claims of knowledge that we hold. It challenges us to examine our beliefs and what we consider to know, and look at the chains of justifications for those beliefs and claims of knowledge. We are then challenged to see whether we are justified in holding those beliefs or claiming that they are knowledge, and whether our confidence levels are justified. Just from this simple explanation alone, we begin to see the usefulness of Cartesian skepticism, especially for those who may be deconstructing from religion. There are also other lessons that can be learned from it too, of course. But for now, let's just begin with an explanation of Cartesian skepticism. If you have ever heard the evil demon argument or the phrase cogito ergo sum, then you already have some familiarity with Cartesian skepticism. It's a form of methodological doubt, and it was first presented by René Descartes in his work Meditations on First Philosophy. Descartes' intention was to strip away all beliefs that were not based on absolute certainty. If it was possible to doubt any particular belief or claim of knowledge, then that belief or claim of knowledge was discarded. Here Descartes was not just speaking of a reasonable level of certainty. Even if we are reasonably certain about that belief, that certainty was not strong enough in order to allow us to keep it. We have to have complete certainty in that belief or claim of knowledge, and it must be undoubtable. Many will refer to this kind of certainty as Cartesian certainty. The purpose of this methodological doubt was to reduce our beliefs and knowledge to a foundation from which we can build up our beliefs and knowledge again, this time giving us a more solid foundation for our beliefs, and allowing us to have certainty and solid beliefs. Just as a rotted house needs to be torn down and rebuilt from a solid foundation, so too do our beliefs and knowledge. If we consider our beliefs as chains of reasoning, then we need to begin those chains of reasoning from a solid foundation in order to ensure the chain of reasoning begins solidly. Descartes begins with an attack on the beliefs and knowledge we gain through our senses, so an attack on empiricism, something that anyone familiar with presuppositional apologists will recognize, as many begin with such an attack. In his first meditation, he begins by discussing that there are occasions where our senses do fail us, something I am sure that many skeptics will agree with. There are times when we find our senses failing us when observing the world. Optical illusions are a good example of our senses failing us sometimes. Yet, as Descartes mentions, it seems difficult to deny that we have hands, or that we are sat in our favorite chair watching our favorite television series, or that the external world that we are experiencing is real and there. Or is it? Here Descartes brings up the idea of dreams. We often have very vivid dreams when we are sleeping, dreams that feel entirely real. In these dreams, we inhabit a world that seems to have substance to it, and a world that tricks our brains into believing it is real. Consider when we wake up from a dream startled because of what happens in those dreams. A good example of such a scenario is when we dream that we are falling. Oftentimes we find ourselves waking up with a jerking motion just as we hit the ground. So it seems that there are times where dreams feel entirely real. So if dreams can feel entirely real, then how can we be sure that we are not dreaming at the moment? And if it is possible that we are dreaming at the moment, then how can we be certain that any of our senses are tracking a real external world? Another way that Descartes attacks whether or not we can trust the beliefs and knowledge we have gained through our senses is his famous evil demon thought experiment. In this thought experiment, Descartes asks us to imagine an incredibly powerful demon. This demon is able to control our perceptions, and we are caught in its control. The demon is what feeds us all of our experiences of the world. So what we are seeing is not the real world, but instead the world the demon has created for us. Let's say that we are actually sat in a chair in a dark, cold and damp room. If the demon relinquished control of our perceptions, then this is what we would actually see. Instead, though, what we see is us enjoying a view of the Welsh countryside and Mount Snowdon in the horizon. This means that any beliefs we form about the Welsh countryside or Mount Snowdon would be false. They would simply be illusions created by the demon. It would also mean that all of our beliefs would be false, as they do not track to the actual world we exist in, but instead track to the illusion created by the evil demon. So if it is possible that we are under the control of this evil demon, then it is possible that everything that we have learned through our senses is false. That's not to say that we are definitely under the control of such an evil demon, nor is it to say that it is reasonable to believe that we are under the control of such an evil demon. However, think back to what I mentioned earlier in the video. Descartes was discarding any belief or knowledge that allowed any form of doubt to creep in. If there was any doubt, no matter how unreasonable that doubt might seem to you, then we must discard that belief. The dream argument and the evil demon argument are intended only to show that it is possible to doubt all of our experiences through our senses. And if it is possible to doubt all of our experiences through our senses, then we must discard all of the beliefs that we gain through our senses. If we discard all knowledge that we have gained through our senses, though, then what is left? This is where the famous cogito ergo sum argument comes into play. Descartes argues that there is one thing that we are left with that is undoubtable: our existence. After all, if we are doubting everything, then we must exist. It would be impossible to doubt all of our experiences if there was not at least a mind that was existing in order to doubt all of those experiences. Doubt requires thought, and thought requires a mind. So, the one thing that we can hold fast to and know with Cartesian certainty is that we exist. If we are thinking, then we are existing. Hence, I think, therefore I am, or cogito ergo sum. So, there is the one undoubtable thing that we can rest our foundations on. We exist. Of course, from here, Descartes goes on to argue for why we can trust our senses. This argument is built upon the idea of God. This argument would not work for a skeptic or an atheist, though. If we were to follow Descartes' methodology, we would have to consider different ways in order to build up a case for why our senses are reliable. So, that, in essence, is Descartes' methodological doubt. It's a pretty simplistic breakdown, of course, but it's enough to get you to understand the idea. There are many refutations to the argument from dreams, the evil demon argument, as well as the idea that we need to have Cartesian certainty in order to have knowledge. You probably came up with a few refutations yourself while watching the video. However, if all you did was spend the time trying to refute the argument and looking for ways to dismiss the thought experiments, then I would suggest rewatching it. And instead of trying to refute the argument and the thought experiments, spend some time trying to understand what it is doing. Try to understand why Descartes is arguing for stripping away all of our beliefs, and why he is arguing for examining our chains of reasoning. I'm guessing the question that's on your mind at the moment is, why is Descartes' argument important to a member of the skeptic community? After all, one could dismiss the arguments by simply saying, where's the evidence? There's no evidence for an evil demon, there's no evidence that we are dreaming, so this means that there is no good reason to believe either of those things. There, skepticism done. But that would be to miss the purpose of this kind of doubt. Consider the idea of our senses being unreliable. There's plenty of evidence for this. There's scientific evidence for it, and our own experiences provide evidence for this. So, if our senses are unreliable, then there does seem to be good reason to doubt what comes in through our senses. Follow Descartes' example of trying to justify why knowledge that comes in through the senses is reliable. There's many reasonable responses to this, but some skeptics will never have thought about it in the first place. But those same skeptics will also deny that our senses are reliable. They just take empiricism for granted. There are few of us that have the inclination or the time to deconstruct and reconstruct all of our beliefs, of course. Some will even find it to be a ridiculous undertaking too. And who could blame them? So, if it's a ridiculous undertaking, then what is the point? Well, let's remove that undertaking for now. Instead, just consider the idea that if it's possible to doubt something we believe or consider knowledge, then is it reasonable to believe it or reasonable to consider it knowledge? Think of all the beliefs and claims of knowledge that you hold. It would be almost impossible for all of them to be correct. Consider that we get our beliefs from a multitude of sources, some from our experience, some from books written by respectable authorities, some we pick up from our communities, and some from YouTube videos like this one. Now, consider why we have accepted that belief. Have we accepted it simply because it sounds right, or that we like it, or that it makes us feel good? Where did that person we got that belief from get their belief from? And did they accept it simply because it sounds right, or they liked it? And what about the person before that? Did they fall into the same trappings, or did they have good reasons for that belief? There seems to be good evidence that many people accept faulty beliefs and propagate faulty beliefs. After all, isn't that one of the many arguments that skeptics and atheists argue? That religious people have accepted their beliefs because it makes them feel good, or because they like it, or even that it's simply a popular belief or a traditional belief. The evidence seems to show that this is just a human trait. And if it's a human trait and something that we all do, then is it not possible that as a skeptic or atheist we may have done the same? One could argue here that being a skeptic immunizes us from doing those very things, but that would only apply if we were skeptical as a disposition, and we were skeptical of all information that we take in. How many skeptics and atheists do that, though? Consider all of the information that you have learned since becoming a skeptic. How much of that were you genuinely skeptical about? And how much did you accept simply because it's popular in the skeptic and atheist communities you hang out in? Once we start analyzing our beliefs in this form, using a method of doubt similar to Descartes, we soon begin to see that the chains of reasonings for a lot of our beliefs give us good reason to doubt those beliefs. Our confidence in those beliefs and claims of knowledge should begin to waver. For those where our confidence begins to waver, perhaps we have more work to do on those chains of reasoning. It may even be the case that we need to jettison those beliefs and claims of knowledge, and instead adopt new beliefs and knowledge. Keeping that in mind, let's alter the evil demon thought experiment slightly. Instead of an evil demon controlling all of your sense experiences, let's consider the idea of an uninformed YouTuber. For evidence of the uninformed YouTuber, we only need to look at YouTube itself. Consider how often skeptics complain about how much misinformation is spread about evolution on YouTube. Consider also how many YouTube channels promote conspiracy theories, flat earth, and that kind of thing. I can hear you saying, but I'm a skeptic, and I don't buy into channels like that. And I would agree you probably do not get information from channels like that. And I even compliment you on that. But do you think that they are the only channels that spread information that is not factual? Do you believe that skeptic and atheist channels are immune to being overconfident about what they believe they know, and then do not spread that information in an authoritative way? When you accept information from a YouTuber, have you verified that information? Or did you accept that information simply because it comes from a skeptic or atheist YouTuber? Have you checked not only your chain of reasoning, but their chain of reasoning? Many people who consider themselves to be skeptics do not. They simply accept the information is correct because it comes from someone like they are, who believes similar things to them. Now, expand that uninformed YouTuber to those who exist on Twitter or Facebook. Consider all the people that exist on those sites who have not checked their chain of reasoning, but also speak in an authoritative way, never having applied skepticism to their own beliefs. But you have accepted those beliefs without really questioning them. Once we start to consider all of these things, and consider them in an honest manner, we see that we have good reason to doubt a lot of what we have picked up from within those communities. Can we continue to have complete certainty in all of the information that we picked up from the atheist and skeptic community? It seems that any honest person would have to say no. I have good reason to be skeptical of it. As stated earlier, most of us, perhaps even all of us, do not have the time nor the inclination to deconstruct all of our beliefs in this manner. So, if we do not have the time or inclination to put all of our beliefs and claims of knowledge through this form of methodological doubt, what even is the point of thinking about it, or understanding it? Well, Descartes gives us good reason to be skeptical of all that we believe and claim to know, even if the method of doubt seems an unreasonable undertaking. However, there is one way that we, as just regular old skeptics, can put this method into practice in a more practical way. Consider how often we have had people cast doubts on our beliefs or claims of knowledge. Taking a leaf out of Descartes' book, if it's possible to doubt, then it cannot be absolutely certain. If we cannot be absolutely certain, then it seems we have good reason to look at our chain of reasoning for that thing. Why do we believe it? Why are we so certain of it? Do we have justification for being so certain? Is it good justification? Where did we get that information from? And was it a reliable source? All of these questions we can ask in the moment when our beliefs or claims of knowledge are doubted. We can also then examine the argument presented to us for why we should doubt our belief or claim of knowledge. We can run similar questions on that claim and on the person presenting us with doubts. While this might sound like a lot of work, skepticism and critical thinking do take work. It's something that we have to practice and perform and be active about. It is something that should be part of our approach to the world and to our interactions. Simply calling ourselves critical thinkers or skeptics is not enough for it to actually be true and for us to actually be one. So, to quickly sum up, as we can see from Descartes' own methodological doubt, it is possible to doubt everything, even if you think that particular level of doubt is unreasonable. But when we think about the many things that could contribute to us being wrong, we can see that it seems reasonable to doubt a lot of what we believe or claim to know. And this alone should leave us in a state of epistemic humility, as mentioned in the previous video. Unless we honestly assess and check our chain of reasoning, we should remain skeptical of our beliefs and the claims of knowledge when they are cast into doubt. And when our views are cast into doubt, we should honestly and methodologically assess our chain of reasoning, if we want to be better skeptics anyway. That wraps up this second part in the series on better skepticism. Thanks for taking the time to listen. Hopefully it will have given you some pause for thought or help you learn something new. And hopefully you at least enjoyed it a little bit. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. And if you have friends that may benefit from the video, please give it a share. The promotion of good skepticism is what the skeptic community should be about. Take care and see you again soon.